Okay, I am becoming increasingly aggravated and agitated because I continue to be interrupted in my videos by either the satanic voice that they try to give me, or they'll just literally come into my computer and zap it. Goes right off. Now, when I go back in to look, I see that some of my newest material is deleted out of my files. So obviously I'm hitting a nerve because the powers that are watching me have now decided that they are going to try to block me from having a free will to state my mind about what I feel. So I'm not going to stop trying. I'll continue to try. And maybe this video will get finished. Maybe it won't. I can't tell you. Now I've only got bits and pieces of videos that I can throw up. And every time I do, you will try to find out why have they been all of a sudden cut off. And you'll know from this conversation. You'll know what exactly happened. Next time you receive a video that's cut off, you'll know exactly what happened. Do you understand? Okay. So, a few things that I want to cover with you. I'm gonna cover in just a minute my most favorite scripture in all of the King James Bible, and because it absolutely positively goes to the real problem that we have here. But I'm also going to go into the book of the Secrets of Enoch, because I feel like if we're ever going to know any truth, the root of it is going to be in that book. Now, it may turn out that it's different than what we think it is, and that we've just basically been told so many lies now. They're just piled and piled and piled and piled and piled and piled up. And the obvious thing has become to me that if, in fact, RheaZeus, Hey being the fifth letter of the Hebrew alphabet, hence Hail or Hail Zeus, as the Spanish correctly name him, RheaZeus. If RheaZeus was the answer, we wouldn't be living in this world under, grave error. Okay? They just know that we are living under grave error, and that is the period that we're experiencing now. In other words, we're supposed to wake up and smell the coffee, but it's not all that easy to do it. And then on top of it, apparently they don't want the masses to know. So they're going to control, YouTube, not allow, certain people to know this. So it's not going to be offered to everybody, which is a shame, because if there's one thing I hate, it's secrets and it's lies. Now, I almost hate a secret as much as I hate a lie, because, a secret is not helpful to the masses. And I just also want to identify this. In my last video, I talked about, the source of all trafficking, be it female trafficking or child trafficking. And I revealed that in the last video. I hope if you didn't see it that you'll go and look at it. So far, that video has not been taken down off the internet. Anyway, I want to get to my favorite chapter verse here in Acts. This is Acts 7:42, and it doesn't matter which version I read. It basically tells you here, and this is Stephen speaking, and I want to point out to you that Stephen may not necessarily be this person's name. But it doesn't matter, because most of the information that we know about Christianity is a myth anyway. Christianity is just another way to say pagan, which actually, you know, I'm in the process of reading this book by John Allegro. This is a guy who would certainly know what's in the Dead Sea Scrolls. He complained over and over and over again that they were not going to release the information that was in there. And he would have been a person to know. Okay? So he started writing books to try to get the information out, which he did do. But he died at a very young age. He lost his scholarship. He had everything taken away from him because he was willing to tell the truth about what he knew. And most of what he writes about, just so you know, is that this religious thing is more of a drug-infested society where they're using mushrooms to connect with God. Now, this is something that I've had the opportunity to do. I've had the opportunity to, they're not laying them out there for me anymore. At one point, they were laying out as many as 50 mushrooms in my neighbor's yard on both sides of me. But because I'd go out there and I'd take pictures of them, and I wouldn't, at first I picked a few and stuck them in a bag and thought about drying them out. And then I said, I am not interested in traveling into an area where most of the time you can't even remember what you saw. And a perfect example of that is Howard O. Pittman's book. And the reason that I say this is because Howard O. Pittman goes up and learns some incredible truths, but then is only able to retain certain things. So what good is that? That's just more secrets, right? And that explains why when he came back from his near-death experience, he became a Christian minister. Now, keep in mind, you cannot be a teacher of righteousness if you eat meat. It is not possible. So all of your Christian ministers that are out there eating meat, and trust me, they all do, because I've come to understand that I'm a witness here, to witness these things and to share with you. When I joined a Christian church, and I want to say this about the Christian church that I joined, it's one of the few that were teaching this idea of a quattrodeciman Passover, which had to do with Nisan the 14th versus the 15th. In other words, the Passover that the so-called Jesus Christ had was on the 14th, not the 15th, which the Jews were celebrating. Called the Passover of Mercy. And the reason that I was able to join this church was so that I could learn about that. John Allegro, in his book called The Dead Sea Scrolls and the Christian Myth, you know, basically, I'm in the chapter right now where, let me see if I can tell you the name of it. Will the real Jesus Christ please stand up? And the reason that he says this is because what he learned is that they can't prove that Jesus Christ ever lived. Not the way that is in the gospel, but that he is based on several righteous teachers, and most notably the one that is referred to as the teacher of righteousness in the Dead Sea Scrolls that lived 100 years before. Again, secrets and lies. So anyway, and let's keep in mind, again, no one is living in bliss right now. Because if Jesus could save us all, that's where we'd all be. We'd all be in bliss right now. But we can't be in bliss because Jesus ain't the way. Least whiles not the way it's being presented to you. Because you have to understand, and this has been the whole point behind my teaching from the very beginning, and that is whatever heaven you are from, that is who you are. That's your root. And anytime we talk about a heaven, like, say, for example, let's talk about Jupiter, Zeus. When we talk about Jupiter, Zeus as a planet, we're talking about an entire people of a very specific blood type. Let's be honest about that. These same people are very quick to tell you that their blood saves everybody. They're also very quick to accuse you, and they are also very quick to punish you. And they do judge you. But it's a very specific blood type, just so you know. And others are initiated into that blood type because they worship them. Now, it does say, I don't believe you end up coming back in your future lives and your past lives in different blood types. However, if you worship this blood type and they lay claim to you, maybe your candlestick will be moved out of its place, just like it says in Revelation. So, but I don't believe for 1 minute that our root changes. I think our root is what we are. Our life is in the blood. Do you understand? The blood tells you who you are. Whatever your blood type is. This is why every video I have ever made that has gone online, even the ones that I deleted, and who knows, I may delete some more. But the bottom line is that they always start out with ABO blood types. Now, why is that? Because your blood type is a symbol of where you are from. And when you worship the place you're from, or that someone else is from, you're either self-worshiping, which is not something I advise, and trying to pull others into your, tribe. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? I don't even know why. And then the question becomes, are you going to ultimately pay for that, for lying to the masses? And I'm pretty sure you will. In fact, there's evidence to support that you have already fallen to a degree. You just haven't fully fallen yet. But that does not mean that you won't. Because, if you think about the heavens, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then above the 9th is 0 point, not 10. That is a human invention. I'm talking about 0 point. That's everything. No time. Do you understand? That's where the Most High resides, in the no time zone. Now, we all tend to worship time. So, we're stuck here. And what do we call the calendar that we're currently using? The Gregorian calendar, right? Can't say this word. Gregorian. Got it. Gregorian. Now, this Gregorian calendar is, obviously from the fifth heaven. That explains all the 5-pointed stars. Let's just get that straight. So the fifth heaven is symbolic of its symbol is the 5-pointed star. Now, sometimes that star stands up on two legs, looks a little bit like a man, and sometimes it's turned over, and its little point is pointing down. What do you think that's a symbol of? That's a symbol of the fallen state that they're in. And we see in the book of Enoch, that's exactly what's being described to us. So, let's first, we're going to first look at my favorite, beyond all scriptures in the King James. This is my favorite. So this is Stephen, that probably isn't Stephen at all. He's probably got another name. It doesn't matter what his name is. He may be either related or he could literally be the teacher of righteousness that's spoken of in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Because we know that he was murdered. So let's look and see what that scripture is. This is in Acts 7:42, and it says, "But God turned away from them and gave them over to the worship of the sun and the moon and the stars." So now we know that the sun and the moon and the stars represent Jacob, Jacob's wives, or at least wife, one being the moon, okay, symbolic of the moon. And then we know that the 12 constellations are the brothers. So this is what they're saying here. This is what is actually being said here. Just so you know. Let's read it again. I'm going to change my glasses. Hold on. It says, "But God turned away from them and gave them over to the worship of the sun, the moon, and the stars." And if you notice, what do we have on our flag? Everywhere we look, what do we see? A 5-pointed star. That's idol worship. It's either that or self-worship, which is even worse. Think about that. It says, "This agrees with what is written in the book of the prophets. Did you bring me sacrifices and offerings 40 years in the wilderness, people of Israel?" Now, again, this could all be just a story. But the bottom line is, in the story, we see all of that blood sacrifice of animals in that book. And yet, how would they have done that if they were not eating flesh for 40 years? That was their punishment. See, they're not eating flesh for 40 years and wandering in the desert or wherever they wandered. Why? Because they were flesh eaters. They were being cleaned. Literally, an entire generation had to be washed off the face of the earth because they were quail lusters, right? Remember, they brought the quail in, and all of them that ate died. And they called the place of those who lusted for flesh. And then in the wilderness, do we see them eating? No, all of this stuff was added later. Do you understand? This is not the proper thing. There's a couple of things you need to understand you don't do. One of them is you don't eat flesh. You don't do it. You have to get beyond that. You cannot be living above the earth, and maybe even at some point on the earth. Now, maybe you can live under the earth, and if you look around, you can see that they prepared an enormous underground cavern system called deep underground military bases. DUMBs. That's a great name for them. DUMBs, because that's where all you meat eaters are going. And ultimately, think about what your food's going to be. I don't know. If we don't produce food and offer it up to you, not because we worship you, But because we are compassionate towards you, I don't know what you're going to eat. Probably each other. I wouldn't be surprised. Or even better yet, the ignorant plant eaters, or rather the ignorant people that would not adhere to the first law, which is the provision of food. Maybe the beasts, maybe that's why you're going there, so that you can be food for them. I don't know. I can't swear to that. But it makes sense to me. If you eat, you will be eaten. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. You know, we live in a reap-sow universe, people. That's God's law. That's God's law. And, of course, I want to talk about this other thing before we move on. Stephen has pointed out to you, worship of the heavenly host is a huge mistake. That our God is above the ninth heaven into the 10th heaven. So I want you to see that in the book of Revelation, the Greek translation of it, called the Septuagint, aptly shows you in not only Greek, but in English, but in also numbers, and in also Greek symbols, the name of the beast. It literally tells you the name of the beast. The name of the beast is right here. I'm getting ready to show you the name of the beast. Notice right where my finger is. Under where my finger is, do you see the XES in Greek letters? Do you see the 666? All of that is part of the translation of the meaning of 666. 666 is the beast, and the number of the beast is 666, but we don't need a number because we got the name right there. The name is right there. And if you want to see it bigger, here it is. See right here, XES. What does that spell? Zeus. Even in Greek letters, in English, boom, right there. You can't miss it. So you'd have to be blind to miss it. It's right there in front of you. I just showed it to you. 666. There it is. So who is the beast? The beast is Zeus. And is that a person? No. It's an entire blood type. It is the entire blood type. But even more so than that, I want you to think about this. So that blood type is fastened to the fifth heaven. We're going to read all about that in just a second. So now it's fastened to the fifth heaven. So what blood type would that be? Well, for one, let's go and look what it would have to be. First, let's look at the creation that the Most High shared with Enoch. Okay, let me see. I have to find this another way. Here we go. So this is the Most High speaking to Enoch, and he says, "And on the fourth day I commanded that there should be great lights in the heavenly circles." Now, why is he calling them heavenly circles? Is it because they are orbiting above the flat earth? Is that why? You know, I keep seeing a jump in my video, and so they probably already are starting to make me sound like Satan. But at least they hadn't canceled my video yet. So let's go and look at what he says to Enoch. He says, "And on the first and uppermost circle, I placed the stars." Now, what is this uppermost circle? It doesn't really tell you what number it is, does it? But if we understand the way numbers work, not how men have translated them, but how they actually work, we've got to imagine that the uppermost circle is number 9, not number 7. And on number 9, we have all the stars. But look at this. It says, on the first and uppermost circle, I placed the stars, and immediately after it says chrono. Chronos, which is another name for Saturn. Well, wait a minute. Now, is Saturn on the 7th heaven, or is it on the 9th heaven? It's interesting because, we've always been told, well, Satan is Saturn. Well, we're gonna read about that in a minute, but on the uppermost circle, that can't be the 7th, because we don't have all the stars on the 7th. We have the stars. We have supposedly we have some of the stars on the 12th, or rather the 12th constellations on the 8th heaven. Supposedly, that's where they are. Now we're going to go and look and find out. But you see, that's not what it says. It says the first and uppermost circle. Now that's the one above with all the other constellations. So the uppermost circle, I placed the stars chronos. Now, let's continue. It says, and on the second, Aphrodite. Now, Aphrodite obviously is what is that? That's the Greek name. So the Roman name would be Venus, right? And it's interesting because almost every time I go online, they describe Venus as that star in the morning, that supposedly bright and morning star, the first star you see in the morning. Well, the morning star is the sun. I mean, it's obvious the sun is the morning star, because the light is produced because of that sun. And it's just enough at twilight, still morning, darkness, that star can be seen. Any brighter and that star is not even seen. So they're saying that's Venus. Well, that's not what it says in this book. So we're gonna look at that, but just real quick, I'm going to also cover on the 3rd is Aries, which is interesting, related to Mars. And on the 5th is Zeus. Yep. So that's the 5th heaven. And that's where all your prayers go to, because you're saying your prayers to Jesus. And the 6th is Hermes, or Mercury. And then listen to this. This is the most important part I'm going to say. It says on the 7th, lesser the moon. And the moon, and adorned it with lesser stars. So now it's going to be called a moon on the 7th heaven, and it's nameless. And it's adorned with lesser stars. Huh. Interesting. This one verse confuses everything, does it not? Because you're told Saturn is on the 7th heaven. But you're going to see in a minute that there are different things happening. So let's back up again. I just want to make sure we get the interpretation of this absolutely correct. It says, on the first and the uppermost circle, I placed the stars, chronos. Then it goes down to the 2nd, Aphrodite, which, according to this same book, is darker than earthly darkness. How can it be that star in the morning and be darkness at the same time? And on the third, Aries, which we know is Mars. And on the fifth, Zeus. And on the sixth, Hermes. And on the seventh, Lesser the moon. And adorned it with lesser stars. That explains the ring around it, right? And on the lower, I placed the sun for the illumination of the day, and the moon and the stars for the illumination of the night. And in this book, it says that it's on the fourth heaven, which is important. That both the sun and the moon are on the fourth heaven, and it describes them as twain because they're consorts. Think about it. Okay. And then we know that between the earth where we are, the first heaven, and the fourth heaven, there has to be a second and a third heaven, right? But do we see that? Can we observe that? And the answer is yes, we can observe it, because anytime that we see a conjunction of the moon, or we see a phase of the moon, particularly the crescent moon. Now, I want you to imagine that the crescent moon is symbolic for the second heaven. That's why they always show it that way. Because if they didn't show it that way, they wouldn't even be able to show it. Because the moon is not the second heaven. Do you understand? She's on the fourth. So how do you show a heaven that is invisible? Answer, you put it conjuncting with a body of light that it may have some relationship to. And that's exactly what they did. And that's why you get a crescent moon, because it's the black hole sun that is in front of it. And it's interesting because the Nazis used this symbol as the black hole sun. I guess they didn't have enough ink to represent it any other way. Black, right? So they just did it like this. And it's interesting because, now let's just look at this for a second. I'm just curiosity, because I've never done this before. But if you start counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So there's 12 spokes. See the 12 spokes? And another thing that it's doing, unlike the swastika, it's a bit ambiguous. You're supposed to try to figure out which way it is going. And because of the swastika part in it, you could read it as going either way. Now this is interesting, because the swastika to me is not interesting. They always put a swastika going reverse, unless you happen to see it connected with certain places, like, for example, Israel and is it Egypt? Anyway, a couple of those places in the Middle East, it's got it going the other way. In other words, clockwise, just like the sun and the moon go. And I said in the last video, you can prove that just simply by getting up in the morning, seeing where the sun comes up in the horizon, marking it. You'll notice it travels sideways, and it doesn't come up in the east. It comes up in the northeast, or somewhat in a, because it's got gates. It's got different gates. So it always moves in a north, or rather southeasterly fashion, or southwesterly fashion, rather, until it goes down in the northwest. People, that's circular, and you can see that with your own eyes. Now, you can't see the entire heaven from where you are. So you're only going to see a portion of it, but clearly it's going in a clockwise nature. And yet, this is a bit ambiguous, though the swastika is not. Clearly, it's always going backwards, particularly where it's, linked with Germany. Just saying. Okay. So now we've got the black hole sun, And we've got Mars, which is also very dark, but it has a red hue to it. And the further it is to the extremes, I spilt something on this, so it's kind of dirty. But I want you to imagine this. It's dark on the inside, and then it's red out here, and out here, and out here, and out here. So when it crosses across the sun or the moon, it lasts longer, and it's first red, and then it turns dark, and then it turns red again. And that's exactly what we see with the blood red moon. Now, most people don't notice the eclipses of the sun, and we don't see as many of those. In all my life, I've only seen one of them, and that was in 2017. So they're rarer. But anyway, sometimes I believe Mars goes across the sun too. And the Vedics call it Ketu and Rahu, and it's interesting how all of Abraham's children were not the ones that he had, but the other ones that he had with his third wife after Sarah died was with Keturah. Get it? Ketu Rahu. Which blood group is this? I don't know. I don't know if it's true. I don't know. I know they want you to believe that that's what the truth is. Quite honestly, I've met a lot of these people over the years of teaching, people of every kind of blood type, and I always find something to like about them. I don't care who they are or what their root is. It makes no difference to me whatsoever. My grievance is not with the blood types. My grievance is with the secret societies. That's where my grievance is. Because they change the truth to a lie and then make it a secret. And once they've done that, they've created a hatred that can never be, settled until the lies and the secrets are gone. Once they're gone, no more. And this is what we had before they did this. We had love. The world was created upon love. But something happened. And the secrets and the lies are the problem. And this is what we have to make war on. We don't have to make war on people. But we got to make war on truth being the crowning jewel of anything that we could ever offer here. We have to speak the truth, or at least do our best to seek the truth. Because that's what's going to qualify you to be in the place that you want to be. Believe me, it's the liars that you don't want to go with. They're going somewhere else. They're going to be separated from you. Because they had the opportunity to teach the truth while they were here, and they taught lies. They changed the truth to lies and then taught them. You understand? And that doesn't go without some punishment. And we don't have to call it punishment. It's just the reap-sow world that we live in. It's karma. Whatever you do to other beings, it will be done to you. So just know they've been building a place for quite a while now for these people. And we're absolutely 100% told in the book of Revelation that's where they're going. They're going in the pit. And who is that? The dragon. And as far as I know, there's only one group that we can call dragon, but also all of their followers. So that could be out of every group. Just know that. Anyway, let me continue on. So now we know that the fifth heaven is established by the fact that Zeus is on it. And that's important. So let's go back to all right, so let's go back here. Okay, so this is in the description where Enoch goes to the fifth heaven. And these angels that were escorting him took him up onto the fifth heaven and placed him there. And he says he saw countless soldiers. So now there's your first clue as to who these people are. Though they may be soldiers, they may not actually appear to you as soldiers in their human form. In fact, you know, they're pretty tricky in their human form because they're beautiful and very hard to resist. And there I saw many countless soldiers called the Gregori. Now, they're the scapegoat for the Anunnaki because the Anunnaki call them Agigi. And these are the scapegoat because you're supposed to believe these are the ones from the fifth heaven. But the way that this planet X supposedly is described throughout all these books is that the Agigi are part of the Anunnaki. Now, what's interesting is they're probably the same scenario with them that they are with us, and that is that the Anunnaki have created them to a degree. Now, when I say to a degree, their base may be something different. And then they try to make them more and more and more and more and more and more like themselves. In fact, in this book of Og, they're called smaller cells. And the reason for this is because they want to make them so that they can communicate with them. Because they consider them ape-like. And snorts and grunts, and that's how they communicate. And so what they did was they tried to make them more like them so that they could communicate with them and tell them what to do. And the first group that they created are those that are created from, and this is interesting, Tiamat, which is the dragon in heaven that supposedly Marduk warred with, and half of her fell to earth. And they used the substance of this to make the first female, which is, her name is literally Tiamat. And her husband is Adamu. And I believe that this is why we see a matriarchal group of people, you know, because what we see is we see in this group that Tiamat is the dragon. This is a, you know, a female warrior woman in the heavens referred to as a dragon, Tiamat. And so not only is she the first primitive worker female called Tiamat, but also the first, I guess, Homo sapien would have been called Titi, the first female. This would be Eve. This would be the biblical Eve. And Adam, or Adapa would be the biblical Adam. And see, they were created originally from Enki pouring his seed into two little dragon women that he found, brought him some fruit, and he said, ooh la la, you know, I have to have me some of that. And, you know, there's your lust right there. Enki is the father of lust. Right there. You can see it. At least while with earthlings. So now, you know, dawn and dusk is their names in Enki's lost book. And when they become pregnant, they have Adapa and Tiamat, or Titi rather. And these are the seed of Enki. And so they're going to be more like the Anunnaki. And back to what I was saying, these Anunnaki are from one place, not a bunch of different places. Okay? And I believe that these poor Agigi was done to them the same thing. In fact, they practiced on them first. the same thing that they've done to us, and that is basically given us their stinking DNA. So the Agigi had to, endure the same thing. So what do? Well, we know that these first Agigis were known as pilots, okay? So they were flying the Anunnaki around, and they wore helmets just like Thor. I'm not making this stuff up. They literally had the eagle feathers or the eagle wings. Probably their helmets were made out of metal, like Thor's, but they had the wings on them. Interesting how Mercury or Hermes, or even better yet, Thoth, or even better yet, Ningishita, always had these. Mercury, right, always had wings, not just on his feet, but on his helmet too, right? Just saying. Just saying. So anyway, let's go back to this. He says, and their Grigori are of human appearance. Now, that five-pointed star with the head, 2 arms, and 2 legs starts to make sense, right? So, of human appearance. And their size was greater than that of the great giants, and their faces withered. So the great giants here on earth were 8 feet tall. Wonder how tall these are. Anyway, and the silence of their mouths were perpetual. In other words, they had their mouths puckered. Okay? I think they had way too much to say already. And that's why they were all puckered up. But they were melancholy, which reminds me so much of a cat's face, I can't even begin to tell you. So it says, and their faces are withered, and the silence of their mouths perpetual, and there was no service on the fifth heaven. And I said to the men who were with me, wherefore are these very withered, and their faces melancholy, and their mouths silent? And wherefore is there no service on this heaven? So they're not doing anything to worship the Most High. Why? Because they are into self-worship, which is exactly what we see with the Anunnaki. They are drunken with power. Now, does that sound like any group here? What group wants to tell you their blood saves everybody? Think about that. Because if I've heard it once, I've heard it 100 times. And yet, every time I hear the story, my blood type gets lumped in with them because we're all serpents, according to the internet, which is not true. Okay? It's not true. We're not all the same. It's that simple. But we are on the right side of the menorah. So we're all on that side together. So let's continue. And it says, and they said to me, these are the Grigori who with their prince, Satan, rejected the Lord of light. So now they're going to reject the Lord of light. Who is the Lord of light? Well, when I hear the word lowered, it makes me feel like not the highest light, but one that's lower. So we all know that there are the possibility of sons of sons. And our son, I don't think is the original son. I think he is a son of another, possibly another son. But he could be a son of the Father of all light. Now, this isn't the king of light, so is it possible this is Adoil? Because there's, as far as I know, there's no king of light. There's only, see, the Most High summoned the light. So the Most High says that he is over everyone. He rules over everyone. Now, he has said that he places the light above his throne, and he looks up. Well, I have to give him credit for one thing. He knows where to build his home. Be a lot better than down here. Because we don't get the sun all day. Though it is said that that's what's coming. So we'll see. And when it does come, surely the rest of them will scurry under the earth, you'll see. Because they won't be able to handle the light. And after them are those who are held in great darkness on the second heaven. 3 of them, so now they're being captured on the second heaven. So they've been cast into the astral plane of Earth's atmosphere. That's what it's saying. Because we're going to learn about the second heaven in a minute. And it says 3 of them went down onto the earth from the Lord's throne. Now, where is the Lord's throne? Is that from all the way up? Well, the Lord is according to the Cave of Treasures. Now, this is not me. This is the Cave of Treasures. They connect the Lords with the number 5, and they say that they rule the devils, just so you know. The Lords are all on the same heaven, or at least they're all connected with the number 5. That's what it says, more accurately. Now, I don't know if the Cave of Treasures is right. I'm just telling you, this word lowered, a lowered is not a king, okay? Now, our, Most High Creator up in heaven is surely a father. Now, is he a mother too? Well, that would be the understanding of him summoning light and darkness from within himself, if that isn't, in fact, the way he did it. Maybe separating himself so that he can enjoy having a relationship with parts of himself so that he can communicate with others. I'm sure it was very lonely when it was just him. So how do you create friends? If you're the only one, you start dividing, right? Makes sense, right? So maybe the sun really is his firstborn son. And maybe the moon is a version of that has been diminished. And that is exactly what it describes in the Targum of Palestine. Now, I've read this to you so many times. By now, you should have a copy of the Targum of Palestine so you can go to the first page and read it. So I'm going to skip that for now, but you just know it's there. So the 3 of them went down onto earth from the Lord's throne to the place, Mount Hermon, and broke through their boughs on the shoulder of the hill. And they saw the daughters of men, how good they are, and took to themselves wives, and befouled the earth with their deeds, who in all times of their age made lawlessness and mixing. And giants are born, and marvelous big men with great enmity. And therefore God judged them with great judgment. And it's interesting because Atlantis sinking into the ocean, which may have been an island out in the Atlantic and maybe even one out in the Pacific, but it was certainly the coastline. That's been proven everywhere. So these people were definitely punished. Now, they may have had survivors, because it seems that the Most High always provides survivors. Did that certainly in the case of the Cherokee. We wouldn't have Cherokee in North Carolina if they hadn't. They'd all be in Oklahoma. So think about it. And they weep for their brethren, for they will be punished on the Lord's great day. So we're hearing that the Grigori, according to Enoch, is still got to be punished on the great day. Whoa. See what's coming? And what's the name of this place? Zeus. And what's the name of the beast? Zeus, right? And what is their crime? Sex, right? So that's one form of lust. There's the lust of eating flesh, which we already discussed. And then there's the lust of sex, emission. So then the question becomes, do you really need ejaculation into the female womb in order to create life? Well, it may be that it is not necessary. Now, if that's true, trust me when I tell you that's something that I've just learned. So I wish I had learned it earlier, but I didn't. But I think it's important to get the lesson. Now, no one actually knows that because everyone sins, right? So what is it that you do to get past that? You become abstinent. So, and you take your creative energies and you use them somewhere else. So it turns out that procreating is not a sin. But ejaculating into a woman's womb is lust, and that's sex, and that is a sin. So you may not have known that, but now you know it. Okay? That's what I'm teaching. Now you know it. So that's the truth. And it makes sense. And they're describing it all right here for you to know. It says they broke through their vows on the shoulder of the hill, Mount Hermon, and saw the daughters of men how good they are, and took to themselves wives, and befouled the earth with their deeds, who in all times of their age made lawlessness and mixing, and giants are born, and marvelous big men, and great enmity. Well, there you go. And therefore God judged them with great judgment, and they weep for their brethren. And they will be punished on the Lord's great day. These are the ones that are in the second heaven prison. Now we're going to go there in a second. It says, and I said to the Grigori, I saw your brethren in their works and their great torments, and I prayed for them, and the Lord has condemned them to be under the earth. Well, now wait a minute. Under the earth, till the existing heaven and earth shall end forever. Whoa. So, and then he basically, hits them one more time with, you don't have services, da-da-da-da-da. Why don't you have services here? You should be having services. Why are there no services here? You see? So the proper service becomes important, people. We have to understand that though we've been lied to about what the proper service is, we have to find out what it is. Now, I will tell you this. I'm going to read this part to you, and I'm going to let you think about this. And it says, and I said, wherefore do you wait, brethren, and do not serve before the Lord's face, and have not put your services before the Lord's face, lest you anger your Lord utterly. Now, again, I'm trying to imagine their Lord, and I can only think of the Lord of light that they didn't. Apparently, they got a problem with serving the Lord of light, which would be what you would do if you had a service. It would have to be when the sun is coming up, and possibly when the sun is going down. That's when your services would be. Just saying. It says, and they listened to my admonition, and spoke to the four ranks in heaven. And lo, as I stood with those two men, four trumpets trumpeted together with one great voice, the Grigori broke into song with one voice, and their voice went up before the Lord pitifully and effectively. So if it goes up, it can't be going to the sun. It's got to go up. You understand? Okay, so I always have a problem with a king, the King of Kings, the King of all, the one personality that you would serve. Do you understand? Being called a Lord. I have a problem with that. So, this is how they hide the truth from us. They could have told us who this is in this book, but they didn't do it. All right, so now let's go. Let's go to the second heaven. It says, and those men took me and led me up onto the second heaven and showed me darkness greater than earthly darkness. It's going to be darker there than anything on earth. Now, unless Enoch is in the bottom of the sea, he doesn't know what true darkness is on earth. So we're going to assume that this darker than earthly darkness is describing the abyss of the sea, but we know for a fact it's on the second heaven. So we know that it's going to be a black hole sun that causes, this is the German symbol for it right here. Interesting how it has 12 spokes in the wheel. And even more interesting, supposedly Jupiter, Zeus, takes 12 years to make a full revolution around the sun. Now, I don't know how true that is, because what they say, what NASA says is in heaven, I wouldn't take their word for it, not even for a minute, especially with what I've seen with my own eyes. I wouldn't do it. So let's continue. And showed me great darkness, greater than earthly darkness, and I saw prisoners hanging. I wonder why they're hanging. Are they floating? That would make sense, because in the water, no one stands. They all float. And it's interesting, if you look at apes, they don't have no fat at all. But when you take a pinch off your side, look at all that fat you've got. Why do you think that is? You may have more in common with the dolphin than you do an ape. Just saying. And it's my belief that these alien grays that we keep seeing on TV, some of us may have actually been in the presence of. To me, they seem to be more dolphin-like than anything. They're gray just like dolphins, and they talk from sonar from right here. Think about it. Okay. It says, and I said to the men that were with me, wherefore are these incessantly tortured? They answered me, these are God's apostates who observe not God's commands, but took counsel of their own will and turned away with their prince, who is also fastened to the fifth heaven. Satan, right? This is telling you where they are from, the fifth heaven. Do you understand? And Howard O. Pittman, in his book, Placebo, flat out tells you that the cream of Satan's crop are these warring demons that are they're in the appearance of men. That they're 8 feet tall, they're colored bronze, and they are handsomely, ruggedly constructed with handsome features. They're beautiful. Okay? Likely they have golden blonde hair and blue eyes. The Nordics, right? I'm not saying all the Nordics are being punished there. I'm just telling you that it's easy. It'd be easy to look upon them. Well, look what Enoch's father, Lamech, did. He's told he has a child, so he comes and he looks at the child, and the child looks like an angel. And in the book of Enki, his father, Methuselah, asked his wife, are these Grigori? Are these Agigi? And she says, I can swear to you that it's not an Agigi. Now, she doesn't say it's Enki. Whom literally did adultery in his own words in the book, the lost book of Enki. Yeah. So he also poured his seed into, Lamech's wife. And we can see that Lamech in this book is actually working for the Anunnaki. So he's joined them in that, oath. Do you understand? He's joined them in the oath. Yep. And his job is to give out rations to the primitive workers. And guess what? They're not happy because their rations are doing this. Because the Anunnaki got to eat. You understand? So it is no wonder the reason these people have been punished. Okay? But understanding who they are and who you're worshiping with your prayers to Jesus, even you arrogant ones that come on here and give me a hard time because you say I won't let you in peace worship your God. Well, you know what? I'm not going to interfere with your free will. You want to worship them, you go right ahead. But just remember, even if you are one of them, remember this, that you are self-worshiping. That's what you're doing. You think there's any future in that? I don't think so. So anyway, now we're being told that they took up, they did not obey God's commands. So we know because we read out of the Kabra Nagas an entire chapter, 100. It's literally chapter 100 that describes the angels because they were jealous of humankind, men in particular, who were like them. Because, they were made like humans. They had private parts, and they were able to fornicate, or rather, let's be clear about this. We don't know that they were given the okay to fornicate, okay? We're going to assume no, they were not, because that's a sin. But they would have been able to create children without it, okay? Through true love. True love. Not lust. Not true lust. But the Anunnaki, like Iki, went ooh la la, la 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 la. And they had to have these little women, and even today we see them trafficking them. My daughter is being targeted because of her blood type. And it's easy for me to have compassion on her because I see that. I see it with my own eyes. I wish there was something I could do about it. I thought, I even called the non-emergency line the other day and complained to the cops about how they were trafficking my daughter at a hotel that was nearby. I named the hotel, and they made up all kinds of excuses. And I told them, I said, well, I can see what's going on here. I said, I know you're involved. I know all police are involved. I know all lawyers are involved because they protect you and keep you out of trouble and anybody else that does this. And the judges are involved because they are the ones that literally perpetuate it. I'm talking about these Jesuit judges and these Freemason lawyers and cops. Yeah, I complained about it. I was very upset because, I think about all these people that talk about my daughter and how she should take responsibility. And I'm like, you have no comprehension in your mind how much magic has been performed on my daughter. If you only knew, you would never not have compassion on her. This is not what she chose. But see, the problem is whenever you are sinning that they lead you into, just like they tell you, oh, you don't need to repent and amend. No, you don't have to do that. Let's go the easy route. Just confess a name. Jesus. And you, my son, will be forgiven of all your sins. Well, that's just a lie. It's a lie. It's just not even true. Not even true. Not one word of it. Okay? In fact, all you're doing is making sure that your prayers don't make it up all the way to where they need to go. No. They're not making it all the way up. No, because they stop at the fifth heaven with Zeus. Because that's who you're confessing as your God. Do you understand? How stupid have you been? When this is over, you will ask yourself. Believe me, I was there. You know, I'll never forget the first time I cried out and said, oh, Jesus, because what other name would I use? But I learned, okay? I learned. It's not true what they're telling you. You are not going to get a get-out-of-jail-free card, okay? You're not going to get it. It's not going to happen. We've already read it here. You know, just for fun, let's go to the third heaven. So this is likely what you've got ahead of you. Okay, so this is interesting how they say this, because this is like when they're first trying to tell you about the third heaven, because they want you to think paradise is there. And remember, Howard O. Pittman does not get to go inside. Because once you go inside, you can't come back to tell. Not without a veil of forgetfulness over you. So you don't get to go into the third heaven and come down and tell everybody what's there. That's not going to happen. So now let's look. And it says, and those men took me thence and led me up onto the third heaven and placed me there. And listen to this. Pay very close attention. And I looked downward. Well, how in the heck do you look downward from the third heaven? Well, gosh, I guess you're on the bottom of it, and you say, whoa, look down there. I can see the earth from here. And so then after that, he says, I looked downwards, and I saw the produce of these places, such as has never been known for goodness. Likely, he's looking right into the, to the North Pole. Because that's apparently where paradise was. So, but most people would read this and they would literally be tricked. Oh, I'm going to heaven. I'm going to the third heaven, like Paul says. Paul says, he doesn't know whether it's this or that, but he did know that the man came from the third heaven that told him this. So, so Paul's heaven, the pearly gates where Peter is the third heaven according to Christians. Well, let's read about it. So, it should be all part of the same chapter, which it's not. Well, by the way, this is one of the larger chapters. It says, and the men took me up. I got to go back. Hold on. Sorry. Here it is. And those men led me up onto the northern side. So now he's going to be very specific. He's going to say, this is the north. This is the top. I'm on the top side of this place called Mars, which the Igigi pretty much hung out at until they came down and got Earthwives. Marduk, think about it, Mars, Ram spelled backwards, Duke, Esau's dukes. Think about it. Now look, those men led me up onto the northern side of this place, not the southern side, but the northern side, and showed me there a very terrible place, and there were all manner of tortures in that place, cruel darkness and illuminated gloom, and there is no light there, but murky fire constantly flaming aloft, and there is a fiery river coming forth, and that whole place is everywhere fire, and everywhere there is frost and ice, thirst and shivering, while the bonds are very cruel and the angels fearful and merciless, bearing angry weapons. Merciless torture. And I said, woe, woe, how very terrible is this place. And those men said to me, O Enoch, this place is prepared for those who dishonor God. Now, how would they dishonor God? Well, we already saw that the fifth heaven guys who were playing God down here had to go into punishment on the second heaven. Now, look what's waiting for them. And remember that story about the rich man and the beggar called Lazarus? Well, you know, what is Caiaphas wake up in? He wakes up and he sees, you know, he has pomp and circumstance at his death. But he wakes up in hell. And it's interesting how the Greeks were referred to as Hellenes. I mean, they were referred to by Greeks by everybody else, but they called themselves hell. Hellenes. Hellions. Think about it. So now let's look and see. This place, O Enoch, is prepared for those who dishonor God, who on earth practice sin against nature. Now, what were they famous for? Which is child corruption after the sodomatic fashion. Whoa! So that means all my Jesuit judges, my Catholic priests, even these stinking cops and lawyers, guess where they're all going? And even though we see this in the heavens between the earth and the sun and the moon, it actually is underneath the earth, I think. At least that's what we read a minute ago, remember? Yeah. It says, that's not all. So magic making, who practices magic? Secret societies, right? Enchantments and devilish witchcrafts. So apparently women are going to be there too. And who boast of their deeds, their wicked deeds, stealing, lies, calumnies, envy, rancor, fornication, murder. See, this is all stuff that is in that oath that originated with the fallen angels, binding what? Oath with curses. We read about this in the last video, that, you know, Cain was able to get from Satan. Murder for gain, secret combinations, right? These are your secret societies. And who accursed steal the souls of men. So that's their number one job they do. They steal the souls. How do they do that? By teaching lies. That's how they do it. Who, seeing the poor, take away their goods themselves, wax rich. What did the Pope say when asked about Africa? Let them stop fornicating. Let them practice sex, or what is it, abstinence. That was his answer. Not, well, let's go down there and feed them. Injuring them for other men's goods. Who being able to satisfy the empty, made the hungering to die. Being able to clothe, strip the naked. and who knew not their Creator. My goodness, they just described the fifth heaven. And Enki never had a clue. In fact, if it weren't for Galzu visiting them, they would never even have known what they were doing. That's how stupid they are. Ultimately stupid. They have to be told just like anybody else. Yeah, there's a God, and guess what? He created you, and guess what? You've been removed from Him. And that's why even if you started in the ninth heaven, oh, you brilliant soul you are, because you're so smart, you have fallen to the fifth heaven. Now you get to fall to the second, and oops, you're going to live under the earth. So that's what's coming. That is what's coming. And you have the nerve to teach lies. And then when someone else tries to teach the truth, you want to kill them. Lovely that you are. This is the true you. I want you to look at yourself, and I want you to see just how much trouble you're in. Because you're in a lot of trouble. A lot of it. And unless you stand down, and I mean now, I mean right now, unless you stand down, you are not going to be happy. So if you listen to your leaders, you're going to be sorry. You're not going to like it. So we know you're coming. We're not afraid of you. And we feel bad for you because you could have avoided all this by simply worshiping the Lord of Light, I guess. That's what it says. And maybe your Creator. Think about it. Let's continue. And bowed to soulless and lifeless gods. Well, that's all of Hollywood. Who cannot see nor hear vain gods. Who also built hewn images and bowed down to unclean handiwork. For all these is prepared this place among these for an eternal inheritance. Whoa. Whoa. Whew. It doesn't have to be that way. Let me tell you, when this is over, there will be no more secret societies. Everyone will know the truth about everything. Okay? So don't believe the love of a lie. Okay? Don't believe in it. Okay? It's okay to be human. Go and seek the truth. That's what you can do. Seek the truth, because the truth will set you free. Okay. I think I have made my point for the day. Thank you very much for your attention. And I look forward. Oh, by the way, we could do this because I love doing this. So this is how rampant you were, because you managed to have a name in every society for the same God. Let's do it. It says, who is Zeus, the king of gods? Well, already he's declared himself a king. And is Zeus connected to Jupiter? Yes, that's the Roman name for it, Jupiter. The Phoenician name is Baal Baalbek. I may have left out a syllable on that. Now, according to this one person, Zedek was Zeus in Israel, but there's a question as to whether or not Yahweh, Jehovah, or Adonai were. And I find it interesting that if it's true that's true, it's interesting how Yahweh, who has two H's in his name, would have been killing giants. I mean, he taught Israel how to kill Og. So it almost doesn't, does Satan make war against Satan? I don't think so. But it may be. I don't know. So I would not rush quickly to say terrible things about Yahweh. We know Israel had idol worship, but they were worshiping all these other gods that I'm talking about right now. So I don't know if I would rush to judgment against Yahweh. It seems to me like Yahweh was trying to get us to live righteously. But there's a lot of lies that have been added to the Old Testament. And even in the Gospel of Holy 12 and the Essene Humane Gospel, we're absolutely seeing that, maybe he was close to the truth. I don't know. But one thing's for sure, he was not feeding the meat, okay? He maybe did once or twice, but he didn't do it but once or twice. That's it. So for 40 years, they weren't allowed to eat it, okay? So I'm not going to rush to judgment there. Now, Amun-Ra. Amun-Ra, well, when you say Amun, Aman, Amin, all of that is the same because you can put whatever, vowel you want to put in there. But when you say your prayers and you say Amun, that's Jupiter. Amun is Jupiter, Zeus. Now, some people will say that Ra is the sun, but let's look at it because it's really more like Mars or Mar spelled backwards, which is Ram. I'm just saying. Maybe those rays are the rays of the sun when Mars is over it, like an eclipse. Just saying. Okay. So Marduk was Babylon. Amun was Egypt. Sheba was India. Ahura Mazda was Persian, and where all this polarity comes from. Zeus, or Zeus or Xes, is from Greece, referred to themselves as Hellenes. And let's look at Islam. And I know somebody's going to try to kill me for this, but Allah is okay. I don't have a problem with Allah. Because Michael's name, Gabriel's name, all of these angels have an Allah at the end of their name, but there's not one that's spelled the way they spell it, which is two L's and an H at the end. Well, that's clearly Allah. Think about it. And just so you know, before Muhammad brought them to monotheism, that was one of the names. They had Hubal and they had Baal Allah that they worshiped, which was one of the 300 plus names that they were worshiping before Muhammad. So that name was already there. And it basically tells you that all sexual perversion of every kind is connected with this so-called deity. And I've told you before that this word Lord, that I have a real problem with because it sounds like lowered, right? And lords cannot be kings, okay? It just doesn't work that way. You're not a king if you're a lord, okay? You rule over, and according to the Cave of Treasures, the lords ruled over the devils. Enki, Enlil, Marduk, all of them are all princes of the fifth heaven. A shar is a 12-year cycle around the sun. And that may have to do with all this number 12 worship. Japheth is connected with Jupiter. That's one of the suns. And think about the word cannibal and all their flesh sacrifices, including humans that they did back then, is connected to the word Cain. Wine, women, drugs, and homosexuals. It's accepted, and we see that that's exactly what this world has come to. women trafficking, and even bestiality, people. So there you have it. That's my video. Thank you very much for your time and your attention. And I look forward to the next video. Have a nice day.